And thanks for staying with us here on PM Express. Tonight we are talking about cocoa politics. It's a major deal. It's been happening for a while, but it's come to the fore in the last 24 hours. When government announced the new producer price, it has generated a fair bit of controversy. The fundamental question we need to ask is it value for the farmers? The farmers are here to talk to us, but there is some important points that need to highlight, and they are factual points about the announcement yesterday, put it in the bigger context of things. You know, this has an implication on our ability to raise a bit more forex, but also to bring in a bit more, dollars into the system to show up the city even further, because it is still one of our biggest earners, right? And for me, that's why this is such a major development over the last 24 hours. Let's start with a few facts here. We now know that in terms of the increase, it used to be, in city terms, 49,600 per this increase per ton. As far as cocoa is concerned, you're taking us to 51,660, just a difference of just over 2,000 cedis. Now, if you look at it in per bag terms, it used to be 3,100, but now it's gone up to 3,228. Right? If you look at the difference, it isn't much, but there's a reason for that. You know, we are now victims of our own success as an economy. The economy is doing well. The city is stable, has appreciated significantly against all the major trading currencies. And because this is pegged to the dollar, when you do the conversion into a city that is now very strong and given the dollar a battering, the difference isn't that great. It is just the consequence of prudent economic outcomes that obviously, if you are spending with the city, you would enjoy it. But if you are earning in dollars and you want to spend in the city, you begin to see that your incomes have dropped, which is really, in essence, what the farmers will be feeling on the back of this. It's just like all employees in this country who have been earning in dollars. So if you earn $7,000, for example, a month, last year when the dollar to the cedi was $1 equals 16 cedis, you were in excess of 100,000 cedis when you take your $7,000. This year, you are now all the way down to some 70,000 cedis. You've lost 30,000 cedis gone because you earn in dollars. The cocoa farmers earn in dollars. And so, yes, government has increased the producer price, but they're not going to get as much in terms of the difference. And let's explain this a bit further. That's where the controversy has been. But it's fundamentally because the economy is doing great, and as they say, Ato is forcing. But it then has, some adverse implications. One of them is this. The point is, the generality of us are fine. We like the fact that the city is doing great, right? But for those who earn in dollars, they are not as excited. So spare thought for the cocoa farmer in the context of what is happening. And that's where you may hear some of the complaint coming from the farmers, but it's fundamentally because they earn in dollars. And now, so that is the difference I'm talking about. There's a plus 2,060. And if you look at per bag, it's just 128. It is very small. But if you look at it in the broader scheme of things, it is a big deal and a significant jump indeed, right? We are talking about some 62% increase, right? In dollar terms, 62. So it is a significant leap, huge. But once you look at it in cedi terms, it is just 4.1% increase. That is the story. It's as simple as that. And so what we did was to say, okay, if we were using $1 to 16 cedis as it was last year when the economy was struggling still, what would this be, this increase? It would come down to still 62%. So if it was $1 to 16 cedis, they will be getting a 62% increase. But now the cedi is doing very well. So although in dollar terms it's 62% increase, which is huge, it is just 4.1%. In cedi terms. That is a very fascinating story. You're seeing the other side of managing the economy prudently and then having an impact on the stability of the local currency against the dollar. Now, one of the things we need to fact check, and you've had a minority raise this point, and it's a factual point, right? But what does the facts say? The former president, when they were campaigning, in fact, on the 17th of July, had made the point that they will pay 70% of the world market price to the cocoa farmers. That's a point that they made. Now, one of the things we need to do is to understand what has been announced right now. Is it 70%? And the way to do that is to look at the current world market price of cocoa. So here's it. The current world market price of cocoa is $7,601 current. Now 70% of this is 5,320. Now, what was the increase in dollar terms? It was 5,040. So give or take plus or minus, the president is not far away from the 70%. He isn't. That is just a reality. He isn't far away from that. If you were using what used to be the case, because the cocoa price, the world market price has dropped quite significantly. It used to be way over $11,000, $12,000. It's dropped, right? If we're using that, then you have a significant amount of money, far more than this. But we are using the current prevailing world market price. The president is not far away. If you lose 70% of this, which is what he had promised, current world market price, 70% of that is 5,320. The increase is 5,040, so the difference isn't that much. So give or take, plus or minus 2-3% more of that. You're still within that general ballpark area of 70%. That is a reality, but it isn't 70% exactly. And the minority have made a note of that. Okay, so that's the first thing to note. And then you look at the trend over the period. The farmgate prices have been going up over time, which is good for the cocoa farmer. The highest jump we saw was between the 2023-2024 from 2,070 to 3,000. That was significant, and then it's slowed down slightly, just 100% jump between 2024-2025 crop season, and then we're now talking about 3,100 to 3,228 CD. So again, you've seen that over the last 3 years, the jump has not been as much, right? This is just another key point to note. And averagely, we are looking at from January to June, we are looking at an average world market price of some $8,786, right? So it's been averaging like that. But overall, we've seen that it's been dropping. The world market price has been dropping. Now, the projection is that this drop that we see may begin to tilt back up again. Now, why? A few factors will account for this if you read the wires. We're expecting that there'll be a shortfall, right? As part of the production. They talk about climate change, etc., and that is going to have an impact on the price that we see, because once there's a shortfall globally, the prices will begin to tick up. So that is the projection. But here's the thing: the more it drops, the more the Ghanaian farmer will gain. Once it goes up, the farmers will lose a bit. Why? Because remember that it's forward sales. We've already sold it and pegged it at a price. If it's going up, we can gain. But if it's dropping and you peg there 70%, you expect the Ghanaian farmers to gain a bit more. And so these are very fascinating calculations that the farmers are looking at. But they're looking at what is going to hit their pockets, right? What is going to hit their pockets? If you're doing the CD to the dollar of 10 CD, 20 pesos thereabout, which the government is using, it isn't much. But a fascinating point also in the statement that was issued by the finance ministry is that although the city had performed quite strongly, they were still paying the farmers in the first half of the year based on the $1 equals 16 CD dynamic, right? And so in effect, the government says they were subsidizing the farmers when they should have been paying them less. If you were using the prevailing exchange rate and the city had been performing well, then they should be earning far less. But government says, well, you don't want to do that because you shortchange the farmers, they will get less in their pockets, and so let's subsidize them with an extra amount of money to make up for that difference of just about 5 cedis that the city's performance, strong performance against the dollar would have shaved off, right? So that has happened in the first half of the year. And then you look at the game between Ghana and Ivory Coast, and we've been in this battle for a long time, the two biggest producers, and you can see the production there for Ivory Coast of 1.8 million tons, and we are just talking about some 610. So something needs to happen for us to catch up with the Ivory Coast. And government is announcing some very fascinating interventions to try and deal with that. One of them that I found in the statement that we haven't had much of was the reintroduction of the free fertilizer scheme. And that is a big one because we've had it in the past. It was cancelled. It has been reintroduced by this government, taking immediate effect. And so that is fascinating. How much of a difference will this make to the farmer? We'll see. The farmers will come into the studio. Let's have a conversation about this. But government is reintroducing the free fertilizer. And this is all part of the package that we saw yesterday announced by the Finance Ministry, all to benefit farmers. And they also have free spraying machines available to them. So not just the fertilizers getting free, they're also getting the machines. But another thing that we also had announced yesterday that there hasn't been too much of a focus on, which I found fascinating, is the government is introducing this cocoa tertiary scholarship scheme for children of cocoa farmers. Right? This is something that used to be there decades ago that the government wants to reintroduce, giving some additional value back to the cocoa farmer. And you get a sense the government knew that because of the strong performance of the cedi against the dollar, and this is pegged in the dollar terms, the difference, although in dollar terms will be 62% increase, in real cedi terms it's just 4.1% increase. And they knew that the farmer might not be completely excited, and so let's add additional incentives to the farmer. So you save them a bit extra in their pockets because the money they're going to be spending on fertilizers, they're going to get it for free. That's one. Money they would have spent on spraying machines, they'll get it for free, right? So you're not spending that. That's money saved. And then money they would have spent for those who will qualify for this, to take their kids to tertiary institutions. Again, government says we're going to bear that burden for you as part of the scholarship scheme they're going to be implementing. And all this will get the farmers to weigh in when we sit for a conversation. But we know that the IMF and the government of Ghana had an agreement, and part of this reintroduction may conflict because one of the things that we agreed to do with the IMF was to phase out the Cocoa Road projects, right? And government actually, on the back of what they did yesterday, have done so. So all this Cocoa Roads project have been moved now from the under Cocoa Board and have been given to the sector ministry responsible for roads. So the Cocoa Board is no longer handling that anymore. They've moved that and said the roads and highways, but the transport ministry should manage that now. So that is one of the things that they have been dealt with, and also cancel the outstanding road contracts. I'm not sure that has happened yet. But that's something that we watch closely, and gradually end the free fertilizer program. That is what government has reintroduced. So that is running in conflict with the IMF program and what we agreed to do. But you see why government is doing that now because of the cedi's performance. Not as much increase is going to the pockets of the farmers, so try and find a way to reduce the burden on them at this stage. It is fascinating, right, that you're looking at a very positive economic outcome as in the cedi's performance, and now you're talking about cocoa farmers' earnings, and that is taking a bit of a negative toll on their pockets. They would have been getting far more if it was $1 to the cedi. That is the other side of this argument. But the bigger economic benefit we know already constantly. Prices are going down. We've seen the feel-good factor around that. But this is one the government clearly seems to be very aware of. And then you have this issue with the minority making a point about the promise that the president made, which is 70% of the world market price. They said the farmers should be getting 6,000. But as I illustrated with the facts around what the prevailing market price is, if you net the difference, you are give or take just over $100 or just around $200 difference from what it should be, looking at the prevailing market price. And I'll ask the minority to sort of weigh in on that. What world market price were they using to calculate the 6,000 cedis, for example? They were explaining when we sat down for a conversation. And the 128 increase, they say, is inadequate, and I've shown you that already. It is, obviously, because the farmers, it's just 4.1% increase from what the MPP was paying them. So it isn't much in cedi terms, right? But in dollar terms, it's quite significant. But the dollar, as I keep repeating, is not performing as well against the cedi. So there you have it. And an upward revision of the prices is needed. They want government to do more, and low prices will fuel smuggling. But I saw the smuggling bit, and I'm like, okay, but that is the question about the world market price, right? Because instead of selling it to cocoa board and getting a small amount of money because you've already done forward sales, people would like to smuggle it out of the country so they can go directly, direct sales, and get the prevailing world market price. Even if they get slightly lower than that, they're still getting more than what they will get from cocoa board. So that is the minority's point fundamentally on this. But there's a competition question that we need to be watching very closely over the next few days and weeks, because we're expecting the Ivory Coast, having seen what Ghana had done, may also come into play and announce a producer price for their own farmers. But currently, you see the difference there. We are way ahead of them in terms of the farmgate pricing. So there is a lot at play here on this subject of cocoa. Bottom line, it's not only about the cocoa farmer, it's about the economy of Ghana. Let's put it in a bigger context. My guests will sit down, cocoa farmers, the two sides, both government and the minority, and then an expert in the middle to look at this more holistically and its implications for you after this.